literally the first thing I'll say to any client, but I'll say it here as well because I think it's a powerful statement for both myself as well, which is when in doubt, zoom out. Too many people get stuck in the rut, the hamster wheel, the cybernetic loop that exists inside of our brain around what's going on in their lives, and they apply too much meaning to it without really zooming out and understanding what's going on.
Will Work for Podcast. Will Work for Podcast.
What is your mindset when it comes to your own like self-improvement, development, especially in the professional sense?
I mean, I don't know what happened. It's weird. I turned 30 and I had this alarm go off in my head of, hey, like I need to make a lot of money now. I need to be successful, whatever. And I guess I define success as making a large sum of money, or like a sum of money, I suppose, that I deem worthy of my education and stature, or whatever the hell you want to call it. And so I go back and forth, but then it always seems like chasing that has got me nowhere, and to the point of I'm not doing something that I wanted to do because I thought I needed to do it this way. I thought, there's that whole mindset of you need to pay your dues and start out from the bottom, pierce into an organization, and then move forward from there. But I just feel as though that's the wrong mindset to have, and I think it's a losing mindset, and I feel as though I just need to change how I'm going to assess my career and what I want in life moving forward.
Because that's been my obsession this last year, right? Is listening to all these people that have started either movements or businesses or organizations or whatever, right? And I'm continuously fascinated by the journey that they went on to actualize. So I think it goes back to that first question of what do you want? And then really putting the mindset of like being really specific and really knowing it and saying, okay, this is what I want. And then start making decisions that lead you there. But it's that focus. It's that maintaining focus that I think becomes the trick.
There's no guide. That's the whole thing, is like we keep on wanting people to like show us a roadmap or some sort of, and I guess I do, some sort of blueprint that says if you follow this, you'll be successful. But the reality is that's just not true. It takes a lot of trial and effort. It takes a lot trial and error. It takes a lot of effort, and it just, and sometimes you fail. Sometimes it doesn't happen. We've talked to a lot of successful people, but we've also talked to a lot of people who, just didn't make it too. So.
Well, that's a great segue to our sponsor week.
To our sponsor of the week. I actually don't know who this comes from, but this comes from the friend of the show, Dollars with Danny. She didn't share with us the company. She did let us know that she went through several rounds of interview and then got this.
Okay.
So, dear Danielle, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for taking the time recently to speak with us regarding our need for an HR manager. I enjoyed speaking with you and learning about your background. While we were very impressed with your qualifications, we were faced with a difficult decision, and I regret to inform you that we move forward with other candidates to the next steps in the interview process. However, we will be glad to keep your resume on file, liar, should we become aware of any other appropriate positions in the near future. I would also encourage you to visit our website as new positions become available. Thank you again for your interest and good luck in all future endeavors. Best regards, the person.
Yeah. So just cold calculated and very stock language. Yeah.
It seems so ridiculous if you went through several rounds of interviews to get this. Cold, no feedback, no nothing, like whatever. This is an automated system. You didn't get this job. Yeah. People just want to know a simple thing, and it doesn't have to be as intensive as the one we went through the other day, but we always appreciate a little bit of feedback. And we would always appreciate feedback from everybody out there, please send us your rejection letters, your acceptance letters, whatever it may be, at willwork4podcast@gmail.com. That's willwork4podcast@gmail.com. Like and subscribe. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the things.
Actually, and one more thing. So we just got invited to be part of a new kind of podcasting network. It's called Oddrec. Basically, it's a way for you to tell us what you would want, right? We're going to have stuff on there about what we're planning in terms of maybe interviews or like topics, and we would love to hear from you. So we'll put the link in the show notes, and basically you can go in, you can sign in, and you can like upvote or add recommendations you have for content on Will Work for Pod. And we'll kind of like remind this week to week, but just another way for us to get more direct input from you.
Ooh, something new. Yeah, and I guess on with the show. We are very happy to have on the pod today Edward Gorbis. He's a professional development coach, career strategist, and author of the book Unbreakable Mindset. He has a plethora of experience in this realm, and we are going to enjoy every second of his expertise. So welcome to the pod.
Thank you so much for having me on today, guys.
As of right now, your LinkedIn says you're the CEO and founder of Career Meets World. And I just would like to hear your journey of coming into this space.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's kind of the most fascinating part of every single individual, essentially how they got to where they are today, right? That always is changing and growing. But for me, a big part of my story is the fact that I immigrated to the US when I was really young. I was about 5 years old. My parents did all the heavy lifting, but basically we moved to the US from Ukraine. And essentially that kind of spiraled into a certain type of thinking, a mindset, right? Your immigrant parents teach you one thing, but you're assimilating to the work culture, school, all of that. You're trying to figure all of it out. And I never really understood how to actually get into college, how to take your SATs, how to get your first internship, how to get your first job, right? A lot of that was figuring it out. So for me, I always kind of like to share that's the foundational piece of who I am and how I think. But from a career perspective, right? Once I got past college, it kind of launched into a couple of different things. One, it was me starting my career in your classic immigrant motivated family going into civil engineering. So I took my career basically all the way from engineering to most recently where I left my corporate job last year, which is at WeWork. And I was basically a senior sales leader and I built out an enterprise sales team. So I went from civil engineering to senior sales leadership. And at the end of the day, a lot of that experience, all those experiences over the course of the last 10 years really afforded me the opportunities to understand who I am today, how to network effectively, how to negotiate effectively, how to be successful in your career. And that's why I really started Career Meets World, which is really a platform, a community, a coaching practice for immigrants and first gen to bypass and shortcut a lot of the things that I never really had that I wish I had. So for me, it's really about building this powerful and inclusive community for people to engage, interact, learn, thrive in all areas of life. And yeah, I mean, everyone's journey is really, really different. Mine is by far from linear, right? It is all over the place. But the truth is, to me, I look at every single experience as a learning. And the reality is a lot of people look at people's resumes or background as like, look, you've pivoted X amount of times. But the truth is I always reframe it. And that's what I encourage a lot of people to do is reframe everything as just an experience, a learning process. And from there, you can kind of carry all that information going forward.
So I used to work in a workforce program in New York City, and I'm extremely interested in your work that you've been doing with immigrants and first generation professionals, and just really taking us through kind of the barriers that you have to go through with these people, and how do you help explain cultural differences and those kind of barriers?
Yeah, so it's definitely a wide spectrum of people that end up in my ecosystem because the truth is, look, I welcome all sorts of immigrants, and people come from different backgrounds. So yes, I came from an Eastern European family that thinks one way, a Chinese family thinks a different way, an Ethiopian family thinks a different way. So I recognize that there are a lot of cultural differences. So a lot of it really just boils down to where the individual is in their journey, meaning some people have potentially no accent and have a really easy pathway for themselves from a language barrier. Some people have to overcome the accent that they might have. Other people are well into their career and they just want to figure out, how do I get from my current individual contributor level to a leadership position, but I can't figure out how to break through the resistance. So people come to me in different formats, right? I also work with a lot of entrepreneurs or founders that fit that profile. That being said, I still work with a lot of people that aren't necessarily in that profile. I just like to tailor the conversation towards those individuals because I know what they're going through. I know mentally what they're struggling with. And that to me is kind of my corner, my pocket of the world that I'm serving. But really, to further hone in on your question, right? There's so many different things that every single individual goes through. So there's never one size fits all. What I try to do is really create a solid foundation around mindset. So to me, I always tell people, you give me a problem, I'll always give you a solution. The solution flows through mindset. So that's why a big part of my practice, my teaching, every conversation I ever have with people somehow ends up going down the rabbit hole around mindset and what that means and how to overcome it. Because I always tell people the problem's not the problem. The problem is the meaning that you're giving the problem. So oftentimes, whether you are an immigrant, you come to this country and you think you're struggling because of X, it's not because of X. It's because we have to unpack what are your limiting beliefs about X. And then we go into that entire process. And then essentially, I can give you all the tools, the strategies, the tactics in the world to be successful. It's not hard. But if your mindset's not straight, you're not going to be able to actually utilize those tools the way they were intended. So as much as I appreciate and love all the other career coaches that exist out there, I know that at a foundational level, especially for immigrants and first gen, if we don't get the mindset straight, they're not going to be able to thrive in the ways that they want to and the ways that they really came to this country to do so. So to me, that's a big part of how I look at life, how I approach things, how I show up every day as well.
I love that as a teacher, right? Growth mindset is like a huge part of the education space. And that's echoing that now into the professional realm in a way that resonates with me. And so one of the follow-up to that is you have, and I love this title, you have clarity sessions, right? And I like how it kind of is this large catch-all of like, if you're stuck, if you have questions. And so what does that process look like? What is that relationship? If someone's seeking clarity, who are they and what do they want to talk to you about?
Yeah, great question. So literally the first thing I'll say to any client, but I'll say it here as well, because I think it's a powerful statement for both myself as well, which is when in doubt, zoom out. Too many people get stuck in the rut, the hamster wheel, the cybernetic loop that exists inside of our brain around what's going on in their lives, and they apply too much meaning to it without really zooming out and understanding what's going on. So to your question around who do I work with, again, I love serving the immigrant first gen population, but the truth is people come to me from all forms of life. And oftentimes they might be struggling in their career. They might be unhappy with their career. They might want to get a promotion. But again, for me, Career Meets World isn't just about careers because I look at life holistically and we can't compartmentalize one element of our life. We also have to look at different pockets of it, right? So for me, especially for immigrants, many people come here because they want to build more stability, more wealth for their family. So a huge part of the conversation is how do I actually get from this level of wealth to the next level? And I never intend to serve as a financial advisor, but let's be honest, the American education system doesn't really teach people how to effectively invest or even how to overcome the mental barrier of what investing is, right? We happen to be recording on a day when the stock market dips and people know I love investing. So they'll text me and ask me what's going on. Is there another crash? The truth is no, there isn't. You have to look at macroeconomic events and really understand what's going on. So again, I'm not trying to serve as a financial advisor, but I also want to, again, route people through mindset to understand that money is abundant and you don't have to convince yourself and live in this mental headspace where you feel like money is not available to you. Because the truth is, there's plenty of opportunities for people. They're just not seeking them out because they're having the same conversation over and over and over again with themselves. And they're not really tapping into all the resources out there in the world. So my responsibility with people is basically to get you from a resourceless state to a resourceful state. So that's really what clarity sessions are all about.
And do these sessions usually, how are they intimate? What kind of format are they in? I'm just interested, or do you sit down at a cafe? I'm not really sure.
Yeah, as much as I'd love to sit down at a cafe, in today's world, I don't know if that's going to exist for a while. But that being said, I typically do them all over Zoom. For me, it affords an opportunity to connect people from all over the world. So the reality is there's kind of a beauty in this madness that we're living in as I can connect and help people from everywhere. So it's really a 1 hour powerful focused discussion to empower people. But that's really just one part of my practice, right? That's if you wake up, you realize you're struggling, you're in a rut, you happen to know who I am, you stumbled across my work and you want to sit down for an hour and really unpack. But the core of what I'm doing right now, and I'm happy to talk more, I'm not here to sell, but the goal is really to talk about my coaching practice, right? So that's really where I'm focused right now and spending anywhere from 3, 6, or 12 months with people and really going through a deep transformation and being a partner for them. And because the truth is you can go through a clarity session, but it's like taking a pill, right? Your headache's going to go away, but the truth is the reason for the headache, it still might come back. For some people, it could be a hangover. It could be drinking. For other people, it could be the weather, right? We got to actually diagnose what's happening. Again, not here to replace Western medicine, but the truth is the mindset work is imperative for you to be successful.
Well, and let's go into that because that's where we're going next. But you talk a lot about habits and creating good habits. And I imagine that must be an essential part of the coaching process. And so how do you start helping your clients, your participants, those that seek your advice to take on this mindset, to build these healthy habits, to start changing some of these beliefs?
Yeah, it's definitely a process like most things are, right? We have to guide people through. As a practitioner, you have to think about how do I actually deconstruct what's going on in somebody's head, right? So part one is really awareness and understanding what's happening in your life today. And again, as I talked about earlier, it's not just your career. It's really about looking at a web of 10 different things. I won't go into all 10, but really it's how do we look at your career? How do we look at your relationships? How do we look at your family? How do we look at finances? How do we look at spirituality? And really kind of deconstruct where you are in every single one of those. Again, there's no judgment. It's just honesty. So you kind of look at where you are today. And then what I always do is where do you want to go? But the go is not this end all destination because I actually don't love goals. I think microscopic steps to get to where you want to go is good, but goals are too binary. And I think James Clear actually does a really good job in his book, Atomic Habits. And he basically talks about the goals because they're binary. If you don't hit them, you're not going to be happy. And if you do hit them, you get way too much of a mental dopamine hit. So you're always in this catch-all state. So I really try to not necessarily say what's your goal, but what's your vision, right? Some people say their purpose, their spiritual vision, God tells them they have to do this. Whatever you believe in doesn't really matter to me, but getting into alignment. So now we know where you are and essentially what your purpose is. And from there, it's really about looking at old beliefs, really looking at habits and deconstructing what that looks like. And then really starting to get people to understand that you can reconstruct your beliefs. You can actually rewire your brain. So the beauty in that process is that my goal is to teach people how to rewire your brain, to give people the tool and to teach people essentially how to fish. And essentially they can wake up every single morning and now start to understand how to utilize this mental tool to put them in a more empowered state, right? Because most often than not, and I think all three of us can relate, is at some point in our lives, when we're not operating in a highly energetic state, when we're not being most resourceful, we wake up and essentially what happens is we think about everything we have to do that day. And we start to ask ourselves all the questions about why things aren't going to go well. And then we start to lend ourselves into a terrible place called fear. That's how most people operate. It's not their fault. It's just nobody ever taught them how to actually think differently, how to actually reconstruct your thinking. Because at the end of the day, 95% of our beliefs are formed in the first 7 years of our lives. And most people don't know that. So what I teach people, and the last thing I'll say is most people don't know that. And my responsibility is to teach people how to actually reconstruct your belief system so that when you wake up, you have more energy, you have more clarity, you ask yourself a few specific strategic questions that give you the confidence and the courage to take the action that you actually want, that's congruent with the life that you want to live. Most people just don't know how to do that. And again, I kind of go into more depth in my book, Unbreakable Mindset, which is free for everyone to look at and read. It's a really simple read. That's kind of the introduction, right? It's not the actual transformation. It's just the introduction of what this practice looks like.
What's one of the questions that you should be asking yourself when you do wake up in the morning?
I'd say that's a good question, but the reality is the question's different for everyone. My job is not to tell people what the question is. My job is to help people see why a certain question is what I call unintelligent. There's intelligent thinking, there's unintelligent thinking, right? So for example, if you had to do a presentation today and you started to ask yourself in the morning, what happens if I fumble? What happens if people don't show up? What happens if say you're on Zoom and say your internet cuts out, right? All these questions end up leading to bad answers. So the quality of your life is really predicated on the quality of the questions you ask yourself. So instead, in that moment, right, rather than asking why all these things will go wrong, it's how will all these things go right? How will it feel when the presentation goes right? How will it feel when people compliment me or that X amount of people show up? Right? You're just putting yourself into a different mental state. So many people spend so much time on social media consuming really terrible content. And I just tell them, imagine if you spent all that time, the exact same amount of time, just consuming positive content. What would your life look like?
Yeah.
We have the ability to trick our mind into seeing and believing different things. And there's a power of visualization. I'm happy to talk about that. But in general, again, most people just don't know this.
Yeah, it's it's funny because my partner, she's always making fun of me because I don't think about the consequences, and what she does is outline every bad thing that is going to happen within that. Like if we're going to go on a trip, like what happens if we lose our passports? What happens if we don't have our bags? And I'm always like, I can't think of all that stuff, and it just makes me crazy. But she says it's preemptive mindset, and I just think it's it's unproductive. And I'm wondering, so what are since you working with these populations, what are some of the things that you have to break them free of, the mindsets that you had, like some of the common tropes that you've seen?
Yeah, good question. So I'll actually tie it in with what you just said about your wife as well in a positive light, right? It's that, look, at the root of who we are, we kind of have this reptilian mammalian type of thinking where essentially we have to survive, right? So a lot of people are just in survival mode, and a lot of the thinking comes from survival mode. So even for your wife, and I'll get into the immigrants, but for your wife, for example, right? To her, it's a survival piece. What if I lose this? What if I lose that? What will happen, right? That's the survival brain thinking. And it's not to say it's unintelligent thinking. It's just to decompartmentalize those two things and recognize, well, okay, what if we do lose those things? Hypothetically, right? What's the worst thing that can happen? You're not going to die. Nothing's going to go wrong. You'll probably have to spend more money, which is uncomfortable. But the truth is that's not a survival piece. So we have to decompartmentalize those two. And human beings are the only species on the planet that can do that. Right? Because we have a part of our brain that most animals don't have. So to answer your question even further around immigrants, most immigrants, when they show up in, let's call it the US or just anywhere you immigrate, right? the end of the day, most of them are focused on survival because they left someplace. They consciously made a decision to leave that place because things weren't going well, or they wanted a better life, or they wanted more opportunity. So that's great. That's the ambition. That's the intelligent thinking to go somewhere that's better. But what happens is when they've landed here, they're still going through that same mindset. We're still in survival mode. Nothing has changed for them, right? So what ends up happening is we have to decommission and dehabituate that part of the brain. And that takes time. It's not press the button. It's not one clarity session that magically clears things up. But we have to go through that process initially, because a lot of people come to the States with old limiting beliefs that stem from either the country that they were in, ancestral things that have happened, right? Different populations come from different pockets of the world and they experience very different things. So again, it's going through this process of really unpacking what your current belief system is, and then helping you understand why it's important and how you can easily, literally super easily construct a new belief system. Because the 2mm distinction I give everyone is that beliefs are simply decisions. We get to decide what our beliefs are, right? Because that's just how the brain works. And most people overcomplicate it. They come up with a parade of excuses around why they can't do something. Nope, that's your old limiting belief system speaking. So when you understand that you can rewire your brain, and that's really the sweet sauce of like what I teach people and how to do that. And it's really impactful because the truth is I eat my own dog food. So I've done it myself. And the truth is most immigrants go through that process. Then there's kind of the language barrier. For some people, it's a confidence thing, but confidence is always mindset. And then it's really just about the tools, the tactics, the strategies about how to enter the workforce, how to be successful in the workforce, how to build identity in the workforce, how to get promoted as a leader, right? How to build great relationships within the workplace or even outside the workplace, right? So that's a big part of being successful here. The second part, right, as I talked about, because Career Meets World isn't just about your career. It's not just about your mindset. It's about how to build holistic wealth, right? Wealth can be financial. Wealth is also, to me, health, right? So again, I'm not a deep health expert, but the reality is mindset is only as good as you're able to couple it with some sort of physical activity. So I have this thing where I teach people what I call the power of hour. So you do 20 minutes of mindset work every morning and then about 40 minutes of some sort of high impact exercise. And when you do that, you come out feeling incredible. And you can do whatever you want throughout the rest of the day. You're hyper focused. You have that clarity, right? We've sunset all that fear. And then you're able to take that type of action that you actually want to do. So a lot of immigrants just show up here and they're in survival mode. And the goal is to get them to that high energetic state where they're super resourceful.
Reminds me of an interview I was just listening to with M. Night Shyamalan, who talks about his parents are still waiting for him to get that call to the good thing that's coming for him, right? And obviously, like, that's one of our most established film directors of this time. Where do you see, as you build this concept, you build this community, you build this network, like where is Career Meets World going? Like, is it eventually going to become kind of a venture capitalist side and you're actually going to be helping in that sense? Or is it really just in this network and leadership building space?
Yeah, good question. I'll actually comment on the first piece you said around M. Night Shyamalan, partly because I'm also dabbling, and I'll be very honest, with Clubhouse right now and trying to build out a community there because, as you can tell, I love to converse, I love to meet people, and I love to network. And I'll share a funny story is that my parents decided to jump on Clubhouse because I have a great relationship with them. I've been sharing what I'm doing with them. I basically said, okay, if you want, just like sit in the background, don't actually like raise your hand, but you can listen. It was an 1.5-hour session. I think like 75 people showed up. It was really productive. It was around the immigrant mindset. And then I get a phone call right after that. And my parents, who have no social media experience, basically start telling me about like, you need to build your following. You need to grow this. You need to do that. I'm like, I've been on this for 3 weeks and we're starting to grow it. So what's funny about most immigrant parents is that at the end of the day, no matter what level of success you're at, they're always going to think they have to tell you what to do or how to do it. And that's just something that, again, when I talk to immigrants and we joke about parents, it just always comes up. And that's where this connection comes in because we just fundamentally understand each other. So again, I've had a successful career, right? When I left my job, my parents decided to, and I share a lot of things with them, and they decided to start asking me, well, what are you going to do this? How are you going to make money? How are you quitting your safe corporate job? All this stuff. And then when I started to have some level of success, it's like, okay, we knew that was going to happen. No, you didn't. You weren't supportive from day one. So they are supportive, but what's funny about immigrant parents is how they support you. But that being said, I felt like that was an important story to share because I know a lot of people can empathize with that. But to answer your question around Career Meets World and the vision, for me, the reason I truthfully left my corporate job is to not just help people, but obviously create a certain type of lifestyle for myself and for my wife and the future family that we're going to build together. But really, it's about having the freedom to do a lot of things that I want throughout the day and not necessarily being responsible to some corporate environment and definitely not responsible to any venture capital firm. So for me, I'm going to keep this very much a small business that can scale with existing tools. I will always keep this bootstrapped. My vision is not to end up on Forbes magazine. I want to build a community that empowers a lot of immigrants in first gen and really just focus on that part. I'm actually intending to launch in March my first kind of intimate group coaching Slack community that's going to be really a package deal for people, right? It's a safe space for people to collaborate, to talk. I'm going to be sharing and teaching them different things, right? End to end spectrum, all the way from how to land your first job. If you need help with resume building, I'm going to provide people templates on everything. There's going to be video courses in there. I'm going to give them full access to my mindset course. I'm building this in flight right now. So this is kind of raw version of you hearing it. But my goal is really to provide them this intimate setting where they'll get access to me. We'll have group coaching every week. I'll maybe have some sort of office hours where they can ask open-ended questions. Because what I've learned from Clubhouse in my 3 weeks on it is that all the immigrants that jump into the room, for them, they're just so grateful that there's this community now for people to speak freely and to speak openly. Because I think, again, there's a great conversation going on across the US right now, which is around diversity and inclusion. And I think diversity and inclusion often talks about either gender or race or maybe sexuality. But the immigrant component's kind of lost, right? And it's kind of blended into all of that. So again, I'm speaking to a lot of employee resource groups right now, different large companies, and I basically present them to that, and they're almost shocked to hear that. But again, if you've never talked about it through that lens, I don't fault them. I just say, okay, well, now's the time to start that conversation. So I felt compelled a couple of weeks ago to really pilot this out on Clubhouse, got verification. So now I'm kind of in quick build mode. And fortunately, there's a lot of available tools right now to kind of stitch this all together. So my goal is in March to really get this off the ground.
Well, that kind of flows right into the question that I wanted to go into is say, kind of taking this from more of a corporate standpoint and the other side of this equation, how can we as individuals help immigrants and first generation professionals enter into the workforce and advocate for that kind of change to be more inclusive environment for them?
Yeah, I really appreciate that question because, again, nobody thought about that when I entered the workforce. And the truth is, right, is all three of us are white males and we're different. We have different backgrounds. I think we all can respect and honor and acknowledge the privilege that we have. I get it. But inside, mentally, I felt very different. So to answer your question is to empathize with people that might have an accent. That's the easiest way to detect it, right? The other part is obviously you can notice by potentially skin color if somebody's from a different country, right? Accent, skin colors typically giveaways that they're from somewhere else. Rather than attack people then they're different, is just have this level of curiosity, right? I think the best thing that I heard from one of my good friends who's originally from Puerto Rico is he now leans into his accent where he's from as a superpower because most people will just say, oh, where are you from? And he's like, I'm from Puerto Rico. And they're going to get interested, right? The people who resent you or have bias towards you, that's not who you want to spend time with. So if you're listening and you want to be a good human being, anytime you come across anybody who's from a different background, especially an immigrant background, right? Just be curious, learn, right? I've been fortunate to travel all over the world. And again, I credit a lot of that to my parents. I've done a lot of traveling in the last 10 years through business as well. But the truth is, a lot of people don't have that opportunity. So simply meeting somebody from a different part of the world is a really cool opportunity to learn about their culture, their experience, and become more well-rounded. Because the more well-rounded you are, the more effective you're going to be in the workplace. Because most workplaces today have some global component. So it's really, really healthy to understand how different pockets of the world operate, how different cultures think. So when you approach somebody, just be curious.
I think that's a great way to end this. We love to give our guests the space to say whatever they want and plug whatever they can. Please, Edward, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I think I've definitely said a ton about kind of the business, where it's going, where it is. But the truth is, I love to connect with people, and you can find me in whatever corner of the world you're hiding, whether it be on Twitter, on LinkedIn, or Instagram. I'm there for LinkedIn. My full name's Edward Gorbis. Same thing on Twitter and on Instagram. It's at Career Meets World. Obviously, you can go to the website, careermeetsworld.com, and download the free Unbreakable Mindset ebook. That's the best place for you to start. And stay tuned for just more information about the community that I'm building. But definitely appreciate the space, your curiosity, yourselves, and what you guys are building.
Thanks. Yeah, we really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing with us your experience and changing our mindsets. I'll start asking myself better questions now on, I hope.
Yeah.
So what'd you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with him, right? This concept of like habit formation, mindset, and even this idea that he has, right, of the power hour where you do 20 minutes of mindfulness and 40 minutes of high intensity training. Like for those that can do that kind of stuff and make that regular part of their day and their week, like I fully believe in the power that has.
He kind of came about it as, this is just something that can be applied to everyone, and this is just the group that I specifically intervene with. I'm more interested to see how it's put into practice. I don't. You are more in the mindset and like what that means, that 20 minutes and the 40 minutes. But I'm just more interested to see how that like is actually applied in the real world. Is that it?
I mean, I don't have a response to that. I think what's really compelling about what he's trying to do is he recognizes some specific skills that he thinks maybe like are lacking for those that don't have exposure to like specific structures in business that we know exist in this country. And so how do you help people not be limited by this concept around access that we've talked about, right? And so his version of equity comes from a community of like-minded people to burst through that. So whether that's engaging him through a conversation where you get to figure out what those steps are that you need, or a longer coaching session where you're going to really work on some of these negative self-values that I think a lot of us hold as a way to break through in your project and business is really compelling. And so I guess it's a question of, what does that community look like? How do they hold each other? And then what kind of success is going to be shared,
Yeah, that makes sense. Now that brings us to our world famous segment, Name That Job. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here it goes. Name that job. Name that job. Name that job. Name that job.
Name that job.
Oh, man. We're going to continue this trend of dissecting more of our positions. And so I got this position from Atlanta, Georgia. This is full-time or part-time work, and they're hiring new and experienced. So they'll pay for training, which I thought was interesting. There's paid training. So this person is a critical member of the patient care team. They will work side by side a healthcare provider to document patient encounters in real time. Training is provided to all of these positions to assure they are prepared to support this assigned providers. Opportunities available in a variety of clinics. Experienced person can provide within ScribeX to take on new training and provider consulting experience. Most assignments involve one-on-one pairing with a single provider, mirroring their schedule. Most assignments require consistent availability, normal business hours, 3 to 5 days a week, occasional weekends, depending on assignment, hiring year-round to start next week or next year. The ScribeX is critical member of the patient care team. They perform chart preparation per clinic protocol, accompany the provider in all scheduled patient visits, document the patient history, physical exam, procedures, and patient plan as performed by the provider, entry, laboratory, radiographic studies, and medication order as directed by the providers. Qualifications: excellent written and verbal English skills, bachelor's degree strongly preferred with a GPA of 3.0 or greater, high school diploma or equivalent required. If no college degree, 3+ years of full-time work experience strongly preferred. Healthcare track, pre-med, pre-PA, pre-nursing is preferred. Strong computer skills with the ability to learn and navigate new software quickly. Most assignments require a typing speed of at least 60 words per minute. Some assignments require a typing speed of at least 80 words per minute. Some assignments require strong second language skills such as Spanish fluency, and highly motivated to learn about medicine and medical decision-making, strong attention to detail with the ability to multitask effectively, reliable and professional, consistently able to arrive on time and prepared for work, strong interpersonal skills with the ability to adapt to different customer work. And that's it. So, Brendan, what do you think of this job?
Yeah, I'm trying to think about the skills that you'd really want to identify. Obviously, again, this idea of, strong analytical skills. I think also with this idea of the patient plan, you're definitely doing client-facing work, and so there has to be something there around, being sociable, approachable, and like active listening, I think as well. And then, obviously, it got mentioned almost directly in the thing about organizational skills. So definitely that's kind of like what I highlighted as I thought would be really good to include in either the cover letter or point out in your resume. In terms of what this is, yeah, I don't know. Like, is this hospital attendant? I don't know what it would be.
It's a medical scribe.
Okay. So you are like detailing the notes post appointment from a physician and like keeping track of it. It sounds like.
Yes, you are 100% doing all the things you just said. You are interested in medical work. You are highly, highly detail oriented because I'm assuming 99% of your job is typing and making sure that everything is
Yeah, I don't even know if secretaries have typing tests anymore. So
that should come off in your cover letter. They provide training, so you'll be able to learn as you go. But I think it's a lot about being detail oriented and just being able to be as accurate as possible, as quick as possible. So however you can format that in your resume or cover letter, that's what you need to do. And thanks everybody for listening to our show. We definitely did that. Name that job.
Named it.
There it is. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. We'll Work for Podcast. Email us at willworkforpodcast@gmail.com. That's willwork, the number 4, podcast@gmail.com. We're going to be on this new platform that Brendan described. What's the name of it?
OddRec. We'll put it in the show notes. Please follow us there. We are sending out a weekly newsletter. Please subscribe to that. You can follow us at regrets_never and Brendan. Gomez_now.
And thanks for coming along with this journey for us, and have a good day.